The Writing Way with Amanda Nicholson and Andy N.
The Writing Way with Amanda Nicholson and Andy N. Welcome to episode 1 of The Writing Way. I am Andy N.
And I'm Amanda Nicholson.
Amanda, what is The Writing Way?
It's a podcast hosted by both of us and talking about writing and publishing and helping authors.
Perfect, yeah, agreed indeed. Now, myself, I'm the author of 10 poetry books, the last one being Changing Carriages at Birmingham New Street. I've done one book of non-fiction called Beyond the CV, which was about my struggles for getting work last year. And I've done two novels, Birth and Death, which are like fiction books set about the birth and the death of an author. I also host a podcast called Spoken Label, which is an author artist chat podcast with Amanda, Grant Kerno, and Beth Macmillan. We also do Not the TV Guide, which is a TV and a radio. Oh, no, there's a radio, so TV and film podcast review podcast. Amanda.
I'm an author of 9 books, with my recent one being Death to All Men, that's currently 99 pence on Kindle until the end of June. I'm a freelance content writer and copywriter, and I'm also an author coach.
Perfect. Now, Amanda, tell people what plans have we got for this new series of The Writing Way.
So in some ways, this is linked to my Substack page, which is called No Right Way, spelled Write. And I'm basically making videos on there, helping writers to just basically sharing things that I've learned over the last 10 or 11 years since I became an author and then went on to become a freelance writer.
Perfect.
And this is sort of a similar sort of thing on the podcast.
The same for me as well, people who listen today, because I've been performing poetry now and been writing it for a professional level for like 15 years now. And the novels came from that and other bits and pieces we're going to be talking about because we've both got extensive experience of speaking about the creative process and everything. And this first episode today is going to cover 3 sections alone on it. Amanda, what are we doing first of all today?
We're talking about switching genres.
Yes, we are. Now, do you want to give people, you're a great example of switching genres because I've never known anybody that moves around as much as you do. And do you want to explain to people a bit more depth, Amanda?
So the first novel that I actually finished and published was first of a two-parter in women's fiction. And I used to write horror, well, I still do write horror occasionally, but I used to prefer writing horror and fantasy. But I just wrote the women's fiction because I thought that's what I was meant to do and it was more respectable. And I ended up writing a second part to that, and then a 3-part series in sort of new adult fantasy about witches. And I wrote about zombies, and I did a fantasy YA series and just kept switching to different things. And my latest genre is probably feminist crime fiction.
Yeah, my side of people wondering, like I said before, I started off as primarily a poet and I've done a lot of poetry over the years, an awful amount on all kinds of sections. I've done 2 books on haikus. I've done half book on sonnets, which you can find about Napawino over the year, and lots of books on non-fiction. But when me and Amanda got together, and yes, we are a couple before we start, we will state that before we start. I was like, through over lockdown, I then started writing, didn't I, Amanda, a lot of like flash fiction, which then
Yeah.
led to my first novel and my second novel and my forthcoming third book. And I do have like, I do have a couple of 1 or 2 flash fiction books en route as well. But I'm always a believer, and this definitely applies to Amanda, this. As a creative person, I think you always should be moving forward all the time. What do you think, Amanda? It's not the case of getting bored, is it? To keep pushing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you get some authors that stick to maybe 1 or 2 genres at the most, but they're usually the ones that are successful. And I think once you get established, I think you've got to stick with that. But if you're like us and you're an indie author and occasionally publish yourself with small publishers, I think you can switch back and forth a bit more.
Yeah, I think you're right with it because I just I don't know. I've never fully been comfortable with the idea of sticking to one genre, but that's the thing with me is it shows all the creativity I do because you know yourself like how busy I've been with spoken label for 10 years now as a podcast, and that's just kept going week after week after week. So I've kept finding people have kept coming forward to me. I'm discovering people all the time. I want to talk to. They've got their own stories to tell. And like in our case, Amanda, it's worth mentioning, like we obviously not the TV Garden. This podcast is not the only podcast we've done, is it?
No, we've done quite a few. We spent the longest one we spent on was about 5 years for reading in bed, where we reviewed books, and then we
Yeah,
had two spin-off series from that as well.
yeah. And after that, after reading in bed came to its natural end a couple of years ago, now, after 60 episodes, monthly episodes, I should state. And then we went and did what else did we do after that, Amanda?
We did Cloaked in the Shadows, which was a
Yeah.
paranormal podcast.
Yeah, that was, well, that varied from pretty much about every fortnight for a good nearly 2 years it did. And that was a fascinating process for us, Amanda, again, because it let you interview people, didn't it, and look at things in different ways.
Yeah, well, found it interesting anyway. I've always been interested in things like past lives and stuff like that, so I was interested in that side of it. I think we
Yeah,
spoke to a few people about that.
yeah, it was an interesting process for you as well because I mean, we both learned something from it. And I definitely always recommend to people to try out different things you're not necessarily done before and comfortable with. The same applies to writing, really, because in my case with it being, and this is what I want to raise to people today is like I had a big breakthrough last year, didn't I, Amanda? And when I did a cowboy romance story.
Yeah. And what did I get you for Christmas to help you?
She got me a cowboy hat, right?
No, I
And
didn't. I got you two Mills and Boons
yeah.
cowboy romance
Yeah,
books.
yeah, and I've read one of them. I've got the other two to read yet as well. But I've had, and this all started off. It's the art and creator sometimes is experiments, and the writing way is trying to cover that to make you think about what you're doing and try things out. Because, like, do you remember, Amanda, what you dared me to do last year for this, what led to his cowboy story?
That's it, the story where give you the line, you can leave your hat on, and you wrote a
That's
whole story around it.
Yep, that's the one. Yeah, I did a story on that in about 48 hours. And how quickly did it get accepted, Amanda?
So about a day, I can't remember exactly.
48 hours.
Yeah,
So within the process of starting a story, within basically a working week, it got accepted. And it came out a month or two later, but they used to be some magazines a lot of the time. And then since then, I've had another four stories from that within that genre published. And I've got a romance novel on the way, certainly. And I've got other little romance stories that are in the process of being published as well. And it's all an accident. And it was an accident. But look, your case, Amanda, you look back at some of the books you've done, and I'm thinking of your literary fiction book here about aversion therapy, wasn't it? Now
oh yeah,
that for me was, and people should check that book out because Amanda Taylor was called in a minute. That was where Amanda really did something quite different to what she's done before. And do you find that sometimes, Amanda, as a writer, it's great changing genres sometimes can keep your things fresh for you, can't they?
yeah.
Like, where did your aversion book come from, for example?
It was just an idea that came to me. I can't remember how I came across it, but it was like aversion therapy, and like they're trying to say that gay people can be cured, which obviously they can't be. And the fact that it still happens today, and it was really surprising as well because I did it for my dissertation for my creative writing MA, and the feedback I was getting off it was saying, it's outdated. This doesn't happen today, and I had to include like references and things like that to show that it did. And I was actually marked down for it because they didn't believe it happens today.
It says it all, doesn't it, really? No, I understand you completely with it. So, like, I find the first topic we're going to talk about today, Amanda, links in well to this, like all the various genres you've done. Because the first big topic we've done today is about ghostwriting. Now,
Yeah,
you've had a number of experiences with this, and I want you to take us through each one if you can, please.
yeah, because I think that when people think about fiction ghostwriting, they think like, oh, it's really well paid, and I'm going to be writing for, I don't know, Daniel Steele or Stephen King, assuming they had ghostwriters. And it's not like that at all in reality. It's usually like some unknown. publishers that take ghostwriters and publish them all under the same name because they've got a marketing plan and the author's guaranteed some money, but it's usually not a lot. Because the first one I got, I was offered a job and it was classed as full time and it was £20,000 a year, which was even then was under the minimum wage at that time. And they wanted 4,000 words a day plus any edits. And I had to read three books in the series because it was the fourth one that they wanted to throw me into. And even though I'd read the three books in about, I think it was a week, and my brain felt like it was going to explode when reading these because they were big books as well. I made loads of notes. I had to keep stopping, so I found it difficult to do the 4,000 words in a day because you have to keep stopping to go to check details to make it consistent. And you also have to get a balance between writing the notes so that you can actually find stuff in the notes or writing 100 pages of notes and then it's difficult finding it anyway. And I stuck with that for about a week and a half before I had to quit it. And I was at the point where I was like, you know what? I don't even want you to pay me. I just want to get out of this.
No, it's understandable. It's, pardon me. Ghostwriting yourself, if you want to do research on this, it goes much further back and you realise. And did you know, as a matter for example, of ghostwriting, there is examples of it existing all the way back in Greek and Roman ancient times.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it does is like they went all the way back to that stage where they were hired different so people would get hired to write speeches for like serious
Yeah.
people. And that's what happens. You think nowadays, like presidents like American stuff like that, they all have speech writers, don't they, and stuff. So it's
I did know that there was a rumour that Shakespeare supposed to have not written his own stuff.
well, it's commonly known that to some degree he certainly didn't write all of it. The Tempest is regarded his last play, but he did write some other stuff after that, but it wasn't by himself. So there's been rumours that sort of times there was a lot of theft going around. Definitely, I'd heard talk he stole from Christopher Marlowe, another playwright. So it's a messy thing. But then I always think of there's a 1930s United hero called Doc Savage, which predated a lot of the Superman sort of stuff. Massive bronze god he was. And there was 141 books bought out in 13 years or something there was
Yeah,
under
that's
one name.
usually a sign that you've not written them all by yourself.
Yeah, but that said, that was done by a team, and I couldn't think of the name of the team. It was led by a certain person who had a team of writers beneath him, and that was very common in those sort of magazines. It was under like and that's what you went through with the first one of these ghost publishing people. They were very fast paced, quickly wrote. Not as if to this day I don't know how
Yeah.
you were going to write a novel under a month on
I
that first
think
one.
the 4,000 words a day, if you because you do have an outline, I think it's doable if you're writing it from fresh and you don't have to like make notes and read books and try and remember everything that was in those previous books. But if you're stopping to check it, that's what slows you down and you're not going to do it. It's going to be like 12-hour days or even longer, and you'll hate writing by the end of it.
Do you remember, Amanda? I can't name the person. I'm not fair. I actually know somebody that was actually doing that for a living in Spain. Don't you remember me telling you about them?
Vaguely.
Yeah, they were a writer in Madrid, and I'm not going to name them for a few reasons, but they were like, it's an interesting point what you're saying there, because when you're doing ghostwriting like that, is the danger is it takes it away doing what you want to do, because you're burnt out when you're putting that much work into what you're doing there. So I know the person that did it, and they were doing it. They were doing it about 2.5 years. I don't know how they did it, to be honest with you. So, but
Mm.
that, like I said before, that was your first example of ghostwriting.
Yeah.
You've had
And then
two more.
the second time was another one which I can't name because I did sign things I can't name or tell you the name of the book or the publisher. And it quickly became obvious that after a few days that it was going to be along the same lines, to be honest. And after a couple of days, I just said, this is going to take too long because I have to go back and look at all the notes and it's slowing me down. I'm not going to get the word count. So I did lose maybe a day and a half's pay from that, but it was just at the point where I just wanted to get out of it again.
It's it's a hard one because the trouble is like I know, weren't both of these, am I right? And it's not, and I've got our audiences here. Were both of these American publishers?
I think they were, yeah.
Yeah,
And they were both a certain type of genre as well, but I'm not gonna say the genre because I'm not trying to help people guess who they are or look it up or anything. I'm just talking about them in general because there's loads like that out there anyway.
yeah. Its employment legislation in the UK is different to what it is in America. And like and I'll say we have something called the living wage or the minimum wage. It's not
Yeah.
the same over here as it is
The,
in
the
America.
worrying thing was actually with the first one is that when they told me they paid, they clearly knew it was low paid. And they said that they don't report it because obviously it's a different country. And they said it's up to me what I do, but I'm sure the Queen won't come for me because obviously the Queen was alive then.
That's what I mean.
So they're
It's
basically just telling me to commit tax fraud.
basically, aren't they? Yeah. So it's an awkward one, and it doesn't sit right with me at all, to be honest, what you went through with that, Amanda. I will be honest with you. So, no, I do understand you with that. So, but like I said, that's two examples on it. What is your third example? Which I seem to recall was a better one, wasn't it? When I'm
It
imagining
was.
things.
It would have been probably the best opportunity I've had so far in my writing career. I was imprint of a big publisher, which I can't name, and I got onto the shortlist after sending them a sample of my own work, and it's for something called an IP project. So they have somebody that comes up with the ideas, and they own the right, and they just pay an author to write it based on an outline that they have, and they give me the outline of, I think, the first chapter and got me to write that. And if I'd been accepted, I would have got, I think, £5,000 up front and then between 5 and 10% royalties once that earned out. And I think that's considered low to some people, but for me, that would have been perfect because I could probably live on what I would get paid. And it wasn't too high, but it was enough, to be writing something and getting paid for it and knowing that you're going to get paid. And I actually enjoyed what I was writing as well. Because while I was waiting for them to get back to me, and when it turned out that they'd rejected me, I was thinking, like, I actually feel like these are my characters, even though the characters they give me, but I sort of developed them in a chapter.
No, I get you completely. No, it's a good point what you're on about there, indeed, with that. So it was. I remember you writing us at the time, and I remember you were even if you didn't get accepted by it, you enjoyed what you wrote with that, and it's a balance really. So it's interesting stuff. So now to conclude this part of the podcast, Amanda, is there any tips you want to give people further about ghostwriting?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't name the publisher, but I think if you follow like the major publishers on Facebook and Twitter or whatever social media platform you're on, and their imprints and stuff, sometimes you will see call outs for something like an IP project. And if it's in a genre that you're interested in, it's definitely worth it because they're the better ones. If you've actually heard of the publisher rather than it's just been a publisher you've never heard of.
Obviously, like I said before, with a publisher you've never heard of, we're not going to go into the bad mouthing game on this. It does make you wonder sometimes, doesn't it, about payments and stuff like that, and what battles you would have gone through with that, Amanda? Because wasn't the first one of them, and I'm right in this, aren't I? They were talking about doing meetings with you all the time and stuff, weren't they? Which would
Oh
have
yeah,
made
they
a lot,
kept wanting to
lot
do
later.
things like that all the time. Obviously, that wasn't taken into account for the payment, so you're paid the same no matter how many meetings you did with them.
Yeah, I thought I was right with that, and that said to me straight away with that, it would have been basically. I think you're right. I think it would have been quite hard work that, John, in hindsight, but again, as a creative person, we're not going to be like, unfortunately, like a doctor, are we, Amanda? So get
No,
paid. Yes, I think it's creative people like that. There is a myth behind it, and we'll come on to this another day about it can be a struggle, that's for sure with it. So now, on other news today, Amanda, the other part we want to talk about today is, and I don't know what these are, to be honest, which makes it interesting for me, is you've got two bits of bad writing advice you've come across you want to go on to next, haven't you?
yeah, because I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts and reading and doing online courses and things. And there's loads of bad advice, but I narrowed it down to two. And one was on a podcast that's actually finished now. And they basically said that when you're marketing your book, your first $1,000 in marketing costs should be seen as your tuition fee to learn what does or doesn't work. And I think that's great in theory if you've got a spare $1,000 or whatever the equivalent is in pounds. But how many writers have that lying around?
Yeah, awkward, awkward indeed that one. So it's I've been treated on some of these people's budgets are like sometimes. You do seriously wonder where they get these
I think
ideas from sometimes.
there's so many things out there you can throw money at, and people say, "No, don't you want to further your author career? If you cared about your author career, you'd do this and you do that. But if you did all the things, it's like you'd be spending thousands, and you might never make that back. So I think you've got to be a bit more selective and think about what you're going to spend money on, and what you're just going to try and spend time on."
I think you did right. You did right, Amanda. He's like, if you ever go on like on certain social media platforms, if you and I get them on all social media platforms. I know you do as well, Amanda, particularly on the podcasting actually, where people contact you all the time saying, "Hi, Andy. Regard, we love your spot, your spoken label podcast. Please give us a certain amount of money for guaranteed listeners, guaranteed everything like
Yeah,
that." And you get it in anything creative genre, social media. It's you just sat there thinking,
yeah.
"Oh, good grief!" And like,
I
if
was
you,
I was laughing because I was remembering how I wound one of them up once when I had a book marketer drop into my private messages in Facebook, and he was saying he could market my book, and I could tell straight away that he was a scammer. And I wound him up and I asked him if he could promote my book for hamsters and how he was going to talk to the hamsters. But does he speak hamsterish?
oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, and what was their reaction like, Amanda?
It went on for quite a while and he wasn't giving up. And
Yeah.
I,
Oh,
and I think the best line that I came up with was, "How will you communicate with the hamsters?"
oh, I know.
Which
It's
is a
just
line that I never thought I would say to anybody.
yeah. Trouble is you're dealing with a lot of them, and it's a lot of this on the internet is people are either chancers or fraudsters, and it's trying to sort out, particularly writing, is what's good and what's bad.
Yeah,
And you can get it. It's everywhere, really. And certainly, I've had it on podcasting before now, and I'll go into this another day because another episode we'll talk about podcasting in some depth. I think it's a great tool for writers to do. But I've
yeah,
had them where I've had some completely unsuitable guests contact me, and then not paid attention to what I'm actually my project is, then launch at me with all kinds of abusive language. I tell them why I'm not the wrong suit. And you get this. It's anything really, man, with creativity, that really, isn't it? So.
yeah.
Now, what's the other thing you want people to be aware of today?
Yeah, it's about when you're sending work to agents and trying to get an agent, and there's so much conflicting advice out there. And I've seen people saying that, like, when you're contacting an agent or even a publisher, you shouldn't mention your qualifications. And it's a bit more complicated than that, I think. It's like if you're writing a book, say on mental health, and you've got a mental health qualification, then I think you should definitely put that. But if
Hmm.
you're writing a book on, I don't know, creative writing and you're a brain surgeon, then it's nothing to do with it.
No,
And
I
I think it's
understand.
just a
I understand,
case
yeah.
of reading the guidelines as well and specific things that people want. And it's like usually with query letters, I think you mention the book and what the genre is, what the word count is, and a little bit about the book. And then you do your comparisons, like it's like this book and that book. And then finally you finish off with your bio, which is where you would include your qualifications anyway, if you're going to include them.
I agreed. Sometimes that particularly applies, I think, certain, like you said, non-fiction as well. That way, it gives people, doesn't it, really, like the background of where your knowledge comes from, your experience sometimes. No, I
Yeah.
understand I understand you completely, and I do generally agree with that one, Amanda. So, is there anything else you want to bring up about this topic?
I, one thing I will suggest is that I've been on TikTok for a few months now, and there's quite a few agents on there. So obviously they're all different, and they do vary what they're looking for. So if you follow agents on there, they will specifically tell you what they like and dislike when people submit to them. And it makes sense to tailor it to them anyway, rather than just do a cover letter and send it to 20 odd agents or whatever without changing the wording.
It's a good point because I think is the crunch point on this sort of thing. I think is research sometimes, isn't it, as well when you're doing this? So.
Yeah, I know it takes time, but there's no point spending all that time sending put your book off to agents and you've just not even personalized it. You might as well take a little more time and send it to less people, and you're probably going to get a better response that way.
I completely agree with you there, Tay. Well, that's it on our first episode today, Amanda, unless you've got anything else you need to bring up.
No, that's it.
Now, obviously, social media plugs. Now, as Amanda advised before, this is like a podcast wing of a Substack page you're running, Amanda, aren't you? So do you want to tell us what the Substack page is again?
Yeah, so it's no right way, and right is spelled Write. And you can find it on Substack, and we also have a Facebook page.
Brilliant. Yeah, that sounds great to me indeed. So, you can find me all the various social media platforms because my made was podcasting with a spoken label, not the TV guide. I'm on Facebook as Andy N. Also on social media, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere else. All links will be placed and available. Now, what plans do we have for this podcast, Amanda? Just to give people ideas what we're going to do.
Well, we're going to be monthly, and we're going to be sharing different things that we come across throughout the month, and anything that we have a burning subject. And people should feel free to send us questions as well through the Facebook page. And I'll probably include my writing email as well at the end of the write up so people can email me through that way.
Like some fortune to clarify, if people have got questions, send them through to Amanda. We would love to hear from you. And then in future episodes, we'll be doing our best to endeavour to answer these questions.
Yeah. And if
If
it's something we can't answer, but we know somebody, we'll bring on an expert.
Yeah, guests occasionally as well. So indeed, so that's it, Amanda, isn't it? Then episode one
Yeah.
of the writing way.
Keep writing, everyone. The Writing Way with Amanda Nicholson and Andy N.
The writing way with Amanda Nicholson and Andy